So did you know that there's this statistic out there that has the largest demographic of people purchasing homes right now are single moms? Yeah. More so than, single men and, just under couples. And so I thought about you and your journey to becoming a real estate investor. And I was thinking like, people need to hear your story. And so I want to thank you for being on the podcast today.
All right.
Are you nervous?
Yes.
All right. Well, don't be nervous. So for those of you who are listening, I've been wanting to do this podcast for a really long time. And I thought if I overplan it, I'm not going to get her. So this morning I was like, you're coming to the office at this time, and she's here. So my wife, Tracey Medellin, is going to be our guest today. And for those of you who don't know the journey that Tracey's been on, she was a single mom. She has always been in real estate. She was in mortgage at one point, was a realtor earlier in your career. But one of the things that you always knew was investing in real estate was the number one investment tool for you to create wealth. And now you fast forward to the fact that you have a portfolio, or we have a portfolio of millions of dollars in real estate. And it's weird to say that out loud, but the truth, and you're very private too, which is, was the hard part about getting you here. But if you think about the journey you've been on, there is someone right now listening that needs to hear your story, because I think about the millions of women out there that don't believe that they can buy and purchase a home in order to start creating generational wealth now, because affordability is so hard. And the American dream is slipping out of our hands. It really is. It's really meant for the haves versus the have-nots. And if we can open up the door for someone understanding your story and looking at it and saying, I can do that too, then we're truly breaking through in a way that, maybe most people don't have the ability to do that. So I want to thank you for really being here and telling your story. You want to say something?
Thanks for having me.
Yes. Okay. Well, don't be shy. I mean, okay. So Tracey, let me build the backdrop for you, because the podcast itself is really about, not necessarily about your success. Mm-hmm. It's about everything that you had to go through to get to that success. We're also in a point in time where we are coming off the worst market that real estate and lending has been in the last 50 years. Mm-hmm. And so you're probably feeling some of that with your portfolio of business. I know we are. But you still believe, in fact, I mean, you and I were in a meeting yesterday talking about investing in another project. Mm-hmm. And you're like gangbusters on it. You're like, yeah, we can do it. Let's go. And so my question for you is, if we paint the backdrop of where you started, and let me, for the audience that doesn't know Tracey, and you're about to get to know her really well soon, is at one point you were a single mom.
I was.
Your high school sweetheart, I even hate saying that word, but whatever he was in jail. You came to realize that you had a mountain of debt. Mm-hmm. You had never really worked. You had worked, but never really in a career yet. Right. And you're sitting there, and our parents aren't wealthy. Right. So it's not like we can just lean on our folks. So you decided that you were going to get into real estate. And from there, if you skip to when we met, when I met you, you had a 5-bedroom house, beautiful house, beautifully decorated. You had a swimming pool. You and Alexis were living there, just the two of you, in a 5-bedroom home. Mm-hmm. And you also had a rental property on top of that. And I remember you saying, I have this property because it's going to be for Lex. Mm-hmm. And so you're already getting emotional when you think about it, because I'm getting emotional. And then skip to, you now have this portfolio, millions of dollars in short-term, long-term rentals. I don't know how many doors and apartments we're a part of. And then on top of that, you're about to go into another venture where You're buying, this other apartment complex. So I'm so interested in hearing your story, and I want people to know that you can do this because you grew up, you went to high school, got out of high school, and take me back to the time where you're there, baby daddy in jail, you and Alexis, but you knew real estate was going to be the answer. So let's start there. Tell me your story.
Okay. I actually got my license. The way I remember it is actually because all the other agents in the office would go to like happy hours and stuff. And that's how I remember a timeline, because they would be like, oh my gosh, you can't even go drink with us, which is fine. I wasn't going to go anyways. But so I know I got my license. I think I was like 19. And so I was working at restaurants, I don't know, like Red Lobster or something, right? Working in a restaurant. And then I remember getting the newspaper to look for a job. I don't really know why, but I saw an ad for real estate, and it was like with Century 21, and they were interviewing people to bring on board, and they would send you to school, and they would do all this stuff. So I was like, what the heck? I'll go do that. So I went and interviewed, got that, they put me through school, which was a big deal because I think it was like $300 to go to school. Passed my test and went and found an office close to our home. And I was kind of just doing that, just like learning the business. And then that's actually when everything kind of happened. I did have Alexis already. She was probably 3, and her dad went to prison. And so at that point, I didn't have stable income. Real estate was not something that I could, that I found that was going to be stable enough. It would be like, okay, I'll have to have someone to watch her. And luckily my parents were there to help. And so I couldn't just drop everything and go show a house or whatever. So I needed something more stable, and went back to the newspaper because that's how you found jobs. And I found a telemarketing company for a mortgage company. I didn't even really know what a mortgage was. I had my real estate license, but didn't even understand all of that. But went to interview for a broker, and I think it was like Town and Country or something like that. Went to interview as a telemarketer, and I did that for only a few weeks, and then they moved me up to a loan officer. So did that, and anyways, that's how I got into mortgage. Wasn't really looking for it, but it's where I was supposed to be. And I probably did that for about a year and decided that I was going to buy a house. So
within a year, you knew that I got to get a house.
Yes.
Why? And the reason I ask why is because I think that a lot of people at that age, you're what?
22 maybe.
22 at this time, are not thinking about buying a house. Yeah. Where did that idea come from? Do you remember?
Well, I think I was surrounded by it, but also I don't know. I just knew.
Okay.
I just knew, like, before I even invested in 401ks, before any of that, before I had any kind of substantial amount of savings, I put it all into a house. And so I got an apartment after all, when it was all said and done. He left, went to prison. So then it was just her and I, got us an apartment. We lived in that apartment for 1 year, and that was the only time I've ever rented, was that 1 year. And then I bought our first townhouse, which we still own today. Bought my first townhouse, lived there 6 months, bought another house, moved into that house for maybe a year, a little over a year. And that's when I decided I was going to build the 5-bedroom house. And I built the house that I thought, I didn't know if I was going to stay in it forever, right? But I was like, that's my end game. I wanted to have a pool built, the way I wanted, the house that I wanted. And if it was just going to be me and Lex forever in that house, then, I wanted it to be the house that I was going to have.
So going back to the time, so you skipped through a lot there, but there were times in people who are listening are probably thinking, I can't even get my head around buying a house and what that process is. You were in the industry, so you knew what you could do. You knew how much income you had to make, and you can probably do the math on, could I qualify? Yeah. But then once you did that, then you didn't stop there. You then went and said, okay, got the townhouse. Yeah. Now I'm going to leverage and go buy another house. And then I'm going to go leverage and buy another house. And fortunately, the market's always been at this point has been on your side, that you're getting equity throughout that. So can you talk a little bit about that? And like, if you remember around when you were looking at the options, because you kept the condo. So that means you had to be qualified for two now. And then you sold one, took the equity and put that as a down payment for the big house, right? The 5-bedroom.
No, actually not even. I kept that house, bought the 5-bedroom, and then I kind of started getting a little nervous and sold the second house.
The second house.
Yeah. Got a little nervous. I thought like maybe I'm just taking on a little too much. I'm still by myself at this point. I'm like, even if I just have the 2 houses, you know, I'm okay with that for a while. So I did end up selling that probably about 6 months after moving into the other. So
did you ever get into a space in your head where you thought to yourself, I can't, how do I build myself to have enough income to buy a home? Because you had always been, I don't want to use the word taken care of, but you didn't have to worry about the financials at the time. And then baby daddy goes to jail and you're like stuck. Yeah. So what was that time frame like that you were in between deciding like, okay, I got to buy a house, or you were just like, let me get my feet on the ground. And once your feet were on the ground, then you said, let me go buy a house.
I think it was I didn't know what I was going to do. I didn't know what I was going to do with real estate or anything like that. I just was like, I need a job. I need to find a job full time. Didn't really matter. I just needed a steady paycheck to now take care of Lex and I. And I knew I was living with my parents now. And so I knew I couldn't do that forever, even though I was lucky to have them. But I also knew I have a kid. I need to take care of her. It's up to me now. So I didn't really put a whole lot of thought into it. I just moved. I just did it. I just said, this is what I want. I'm going to do it. And then and I always had supportive parents. They were never like, what are you getting yourself into? You might be like, never once did my parents say that to me. Like, you know, you better slow down, watch what you're doing. You're going to get yourself in trouble. They never once made me feel like I couldn't do it. And honestly, like I never really thought that I couldn't do it. Like I was like, I'm going to do this. And, you know.
Yeah. I remember when we first started dating, I was living in Scottsdale and I had an apartment there because I really didn't know the lay of the land. Like had I known the lay of the land, I probably wouldn't have moved to Scottsdale because it wasn't even like cool Scottsdale. It was like way on the outskirts of Scottsdale. Yeah. And I remember we were talking and you kind of got me on the trip of, I need to buy real estate. I don't know how that came up, but then I went to Texas and said, well, if I'm going to buy anywhere, I'll buy in Texas because that's where I'm from. And we bought a place there and then we bought a second place there. And I just remember you saying at the time, you don't have time to think about this. You gotta pull the trigger and you gotta move fast on these. And I was just like, I don't know who this chick is, but she seems to know what she's talking about. So I'm going to pull the trigger on these. And I did. And we ended up with those 2 houses. Even before I had my own house, you know, we went and bought those 2 for rentals, or one for my parents and then one for a rental. And then, but you have this, like, I think one of the reasons why you were having a hard time coming on the show, because you're like, well, I don't know what I'm going to say. I don't know what I'm going to talk about, but you do have a rule book. This morning we were talking about this deal and I was making some suggestions on the structure of the deal. And you're like, in so many words, you can dick around with this, but time is killing deals. We need to make a decision fast. Yeah. Where does that come from? Like, where do you get that piece about real estate and the deals you're making to know you're making good decision?
I mean, right or wrong, all of my decisions have been made with my gut. The numbers are in my head. I might scratch it down on a piece of paper. Or maybe now, but throughout the last 20 years, I didn't have this detailed Excel spreadsheet, detailing every single thing out. Like I just looked quick numbers on a quick notepad and then would go. And almost every time it was just a decision with my gut. And I've, up until recently, not made one bad decision.
Recently?
It always worked.
Yeah.
My gut always got me into a great investment, a good scenario. So I've always just trusted my gut. When I feel like something's right, like our appointment yesterday, like it feels right. I think, you
make a move on it.
Yeah. It's scary because that's my end game. So just do it.
So I remember when I remember hearing a story about, because I think that the audience being, when I think about who I'm trying to connect with today on this podcast and the audience, it's like Alexis's friends, our daughter's friends, who are at that age where they're going to be buying, but it's so unaffordable. And you have been helping some of her friends through that process. And this is not what you do. You have a real estate license, but your goal in life isn't to go help people and clients get houses, but you also get into the point where you're like, there's no one that's going to help them better than me. So I'm going to help this individual out. Right. And I don't mind, because daddy needs new shoes and you getting a little income doesn't suck. Yeah. But I will say, what you're doing to help these individuals is you are looking at it saying you have to buy. If you can afford it, then buy.
Right.
Where does that come from? Like, why do you believe that someone right now at a 7.5 rate, if they can afford it, should go buy a house today if they're a single mom?
Well, because if they're a single mom, for me, I looked at it as I might be a single mom forever. Like that's the way I looked at it. Like, I don't know. I might not find someone I think is worthy to be in mine and Alexis's life. That's the truth. So I thought I need to be prepared to be a single mom until she's grown. The only way I knew to do that was through real estate, because through equity, building the equity, I didn't realize even at that time what I could do with all that. Like it was just like buy a house, get it paid off. Now I have equity. Like now I can access that cash. I look at that differently now, but at the time that's what it was. But the reason why, and I have said this to many young girls recently, is because, most of them don't have a lot of savings. They are living paycheck to paycheck. So buying a house seems scary, but there's a lot of programs that help them get into the homes. But also it's like, if you don't buy now, you're going to be up against 100 other people trying to get into that home. Worst case scenario, you get into the home, it's a little bit uncomfortable because the rates are high. Well, if the rates go down, you can refinance. If they don't go down, okay, you're still building equity. You still have a home. Like you can't go wrong with that. And then, if the rates continue to go up, well, now you've got a better rate than the most people are still out there shopping. So, I don't know.
No, keep going. I think what you were going to say is it's just, you believe in real estate. Like
absolutely,
we had the same accountant, our CPA for the longest time, and he would look at our books every year and it's like, you got to get out of real estate. You got to get out of real estate. And then we'd come and talk like, we got to get out of real estate, but it's like, there's another deal. Yeah. Let's do this deal. Yeah. Another real estate deal is, because that's all we know. Yeah. Like people buy stocks or, you can go invest in different things, but we just know real estate, and it's always played in our favor. And we've seen in our lifetimes, two of the rockiest times this last year. Right. And then in 2008, 2009, where we saw values just crumble in the marketplace. So, and even then, even through that, you're able to sit here and say real estate's the only place that you're going to develop wealth, and talk about that for a second.
Well, actually, during that time, people were scared and they were letting their houses go. And I had these rental properties, and I just watched the equity diminish, and I just stayed the path. Like I was not going to, step away from those. I know there were situations where people needed to, but for me, it was like, this is a long term goal for me. Like, keep those houses, stay the path, and it'll be okay. And it did. And I still own those houses. They're, and I'm happy I did.
Oh, without a doubt. Not only that, but, we saw even our neighbors that were like letting their houses go, and it was killing our value.
Killing our values, but.
And then the values just skyrocketed back up as soon as the market turned. Like I think it was 2010, 2011, prices were back. And so it always works out. So no matter what, if you buy today, at a 7% rate, one, you can refinance, but two, that house is going to increase in value in the next 6 months because it's going to be a frenzy. And so I think that there is this fear of the unknown. And I think if you have that fear of the unknown, talk to somebody like Tracey who can help you, get your head around what it looks like, because every day that you're paying rent, you're not building on anything. Right. In fact, you're just making your landlord more money, and so now you kind of, let's talk about, I want to flip into short-term sales, short-term rentals, because you started leaning in on this. We always had this dream. Well, first off, let me go back a little bit. One of the things about you that you taught me in a way that I don't think I would have been able to do is, one, we have to live within our means in terms of the house we live in. So we always the first house that we had together to the second house that we had together to now this house we had together. This is probably the first house that we've been in that we kind of splurged on. But we were always like, we just want to leverage and go buy more properties, more investments. And I remember even with the cabin, we were like, I don't know what got us into thinking about a cabin, but we're like, we want a cabin. In 2019, 2018. I
think before that, we would go stay up north and be like,
we like it here.
Yeah, I want one of these.
But then we had the money, but it was like, I can't imagine getting a cabin and just letting it sit there, and we're not going to come all the time. And somebody here had told me, it sucks having a cabin because you're going to have to go up and you got to clean everything. Right. And you got to do the yard and mess with everything. And so I just got it in my head, like, I don't want a cabin. And then you were like, let's do it and Airbnb it. And it was like the light bulb went off, because it was like, we can have what we've always wanted and make income from it. Right. And not only did we do that, it's been an income stream for us. Like, not only, I don't know that without the first Airbnb that we did, the rest of the Airbnbs could have survived without what we're making off that one. So you got the first, then you did the second.
6 months later, did a second.
Then you did a third, all in the same area. Then you went out and bought a fourth. Then a fifth. We're almost bought a sixth, I think, but no, we did a six, right? Yeah. So you've been in the Airbnb game. Yeah. And for somebody listening who is at that point in their life where they're like, hey, it would be cool to have a cabin, or it would be cool to have, this other property, but how do I leverage Airbnb or the short-term rental game? What advice do you give them?
Well, I don't think someone can just move right into short-term without having, or maybe they could. But I wouldn't recommend it. I wouldn't recommend just being like, oh, I want to go be a short-term investor without any experience prior to, because there's a lot that goes into it. It's not like
you did it.
No, I had all these long-term.
Oh, got it. I see what you're saying. I see what you're saying. You knew the landlord game.
Right. I don't. Yeah. So it would be very difficult to just jump into, because there's so much that goes into short term, which is why they are more lucrative than a long term, but they're not just sit back and expect a paycheck. Yep. You do work for them. They take up a lot of your time. You're dealing with, gas and trash and cleaning supplies and towels and sheets and making sure all those are up to par and what you would want in your home. So I don't know.
Well, no, but this is a good question. So you're of the just know it's not going to be because it's funny. We saw a lot of people do it. We saw a lot of people jump into the Airbnb game, like right after we did in the same market and not realizing how hard it was going to be.
Yeah.
And you have made this a lot of your full-time job to not just manage all of our properties, the portfolio of real estate that we own, but you handle the kids, you literally do everything. First off, thank you. I am acknowledging that I don't do shit and you do a lot, but, when it comes to, managing the household, but I will say that what you do, you have a playbook in your head that I'm like, I wish I can get that on paper and sell it on an Airbnb because for instance, you know how to decorate the Airbnb. You argue with me on this. You're like, people are not renting a cabin to live in a modern, to go stay in a modern, spot.
I mean, sure, there's a market for the modern cabin. There's a lot of those, but for me, that was not what
you wanted.
I want to feel like I'm in a cabin. I want it to feel a certain way. I want to look around and feel like I'm in a cabin. I don't want to feel like I'm in a home in Chandler, just some woods around me. Like I wanted to have that feeling. And so with short terms, that's also, it's not just a house to stay in. It's also like an experience. So another short term that I might have might be modern Southwest because of the market that it's in. So I want the decor to be, with the cactus around. I want the inside of that home to reflect that because it's an experience.
So then if somebody was doing this, if somebody said, okay, I've been a landlord, I want to start testing out the short-term rental game. You have a bad taste in your mouth right now, even though we have some properties that are doing really well. What's the state of short-term rentals that, in your opinion, in the markets we're in? So, and to give you guys a little bit of an idea, we have Airbnbs in Arizona, we have Airbnbs in Florida, we have Airbnbs in Mississippi, and yeah, I think that's it, right? So, seeing the different markets that we've been in, what do you see is the biggest drawback, and what would you say to somebody looking to get an Airbnb in this market?
I don't know whether it's the right opinion or not, but for me right now, I would say hold off.
Yeah.
Like hold off. It's very saturated in almost every market. If you got in early, you're probably doing okay. But if you were to jump in now, there's a lot of competition, and obviously your overhead is going to be a lot harder. Different guidelines in different cities. It's all a lot to manage. So yes, right now I would probably not encourage it.
What did you like? Let's be straight with people. Like, what did you come to realize? What did you learn in 2023 when it came to the short-term rental game? Be real, like just straight up.
It's
like,
oversaturated, but not every market. Some people are thriving, and so that's what I'm saying. But for me, I picked homes, for example, in Orlando, Florida, 5 minutes from Disney World. Well, there's a lot of controversy over Disney World, so that's cut back on travel alone to the Disney World platform. But also just short-term rentals in 23 are significantly lower, just like real estate is.
Why did you buy in Orlando, Florida, in Margaritaville?
Because it looked cool. And
no, let's go back to the root. Let's go to the root cause. Where were we that the idea entered your mind to buy in there?
We were actually in Miami.
Exactly.
And, yeah.
Where were we? We're on the beach talking to Brian.
Yeah.
And you were like, I'm going to go do this. And then you went and did it.
Yeah. Brian said he had a house in Margaritaville.
Thank you, Brian Covey. This is great. Yeah.
And I went home I think I probably messaged someone within 5 days, and I found a home and was in contract probably the next month.
Yeah. I mean, I think, but I do, if you would ask me today about that same deal, should we buy 5 minutes from Disney World in a place called Margaritaville, where the streets are named after all of, his songs. What's his name? Can't think of his name.
Guy that died.
Yeah. That's going to kill me.
Jimmy Buffett.
Jimmy Buffett. Yeah. Named after Jimmy. And, you know, our house is on Knee Deep, which is, you know, and everything about it sounds cool. I even looked it up and I was like, there's a shuttle that takes you to like Fleming's and like all these other restaurants. It is an amazing area, but for whatever reason, it's not hitting.
It's struggling.
Yeah. And so what's even more interesting about the entire short-term rental game with you is that in the most saturated markets is where you're thriving. Like I feel like everyone, like every 5 of my friends that I know probably has a cabin in Pine Top that they're Airbnb-ing, yet ours are crushing it there, that they're actually feeding the other ones. So where does your real estate game go? Like, what are the areas of real estate right now in the shittiest market that we've been in a long time that you're banking on right now that you would bet on? Like, where would you put your money today?
Well, I mean, I know where I'm going to put my money.
I know. We'll talk about it.
In apartment buildings.
Yeah. Why apartments? Why apartments for you? Is it because it's the next iteration of the investor game in real estate? Like I've done residential, I've done short term, I've done long term, and now it's like, just go apartments.
We did some multi, and we've had a multi-unit in the past, and that's where I'm going to focus my energy.
Yeah.
Is that it's like,
So, but why? The question is why? Like, what I'm trying to figure out, is it because you feel like that's the next iteration in just investing, or is it because you believe the market is going to always need rentals? What is your thought process for that?
Absolutely. Whether it's a short-term house, whether it's a 3-bedroom house or not, like, I just know for me, it's my next step and what I have a number in mind, for our portfolio, and to get there, that's my next step.
Yeah. Well, share with me the number in your head for in the portfolio. All right.
Now, I mean, I had a number. I'm very close to that number.
Yeah.
But now I'm ready to surpass that number.
I love that. I love that you have goals that I have no idea about. When can we get in a room and talk about these goals?
We're at the signing table.
How many? So I want to go back really quickly, and because I want you to share the story with everyone, because it's fun to talk about. What's the word I want to say? You're in the investment game. You're legit an investor now. You're a player in the real estate investment game. But it hasn't always been like that. You know, there was a point, I don't know if you remember this, so I know you remember it, where we were literally both laid off at the same time. It was like, there was like not a long period of time. It was like a 2-week, 3-week period where I take it back. I was laid off. You had quit. You were like, F this, I'm not going to work there. They told you, like, you got to get on the phones. You're like, I'm not getting on the phones. Like, I'll see you guys later. You dipped out. And then we were both like looking at each other on the couch, like, well, why are we both here? We can't both be, poor. But it hasn't always been good. And this market is tested a lot with us, right? Like we're bleeding in a lot of our properties, and then we talk to other investors and like, same. But for you, tell me a time where you remember right before, like, you had to change your mindset of, I can live this way or I can live that way. And I'm choosing to get out of my mind and go this way. And I don't know if it was back when you decided that your baby daddy was going to jail and you decided you had to go build something on your own and you just back was against a wall, or if it was, times where you couldn't make ends meet, when you were in the houses. I don't know, but what is it for you? The idea of the podcast is really about not just the breakthrough, but the struggle to the breakthrough. And so is there a time where it really jumps out in your life where you were like, you had to make a decision by yourself alone in a cold, dark place and say, I can go this way or I can go that way. And you chose a different path. What was that story? Tell me what when that was in your life that you were like, I can feel bad about myself and, or I can get up and dust myself off and and through that found success. Because even though we're coming out of a hard year and it doesn't feel like success, you have millions of dollars in real estate that if we had to go sell it tomorrow, we'll be okay.
Right.
You know what I mean? So it seems hard, but it really isn't. We're in a place where we weren't maybe in 2008.
Yeah.
So what was that time for you when you were like questioning everything?
I don't know that I ever questioned. Like I honestly, I don't know that I ever questioned my path. It was just like, once I make a decision, that's just it. And so I think probably what you're looking for is a time where I was faced with stuff, and it's like, without going into, you can so
go
much.
Into it.
No, but like, I'm just saying, like, there is a point where I was sitting in that apartment. I was like, what am I going to do? Like, yes, I have a child. At that time, my parents, who were a big support system, were moving out of state. They were selling our childhood home and moving out of state, which was great for them. And 9/11 had just happened, and my dad was very passionate about what had just happened. So he was retired military. So when that happened, he re-enlisted and was like, I'm back in. Well, he's older. He's not really back in. So what they did is they offered him a position to move to Georgia.
That's total Huey.
Yeah.
To go and be like, sign me up. I'm going.
Sign me up. He's like, can't do, but sign me up.
Calm down, Huey, calm down. But he was like, I'm in.
He's like,
Let's
I'm
go.
in. So, and it was a good mood for them financially, but at the same time, they're selling our childhood home. So it was kind of hard for everyone. So, but I knew I had to support them. If I was support them, meaning if I was a mess over it, if I was,
You've always been that way. You've always been the rock of the family.
If I had turned into a mess or said, like, you can't leave,
they would just not have
they
gone.
would have never left. So I knew I just had to be okay with it and support it. And I knew it was going to be good for them. So that's what happened. They sold our childhood home, moved to Georgia. So now, I'm not only single mom, but my parents are gone now. So, and baby daddy's in prison. So that sucked for a while. I did have support from his mother. So that was great. I had her support. She helped me, like, as far as helping me care for Alexis while I went to work and stuff. So I did have that, but it's different when I didn't have my own parents. But there was a point where I was overwhelmed, and I had this new apartment and they're gone. And I just, you're going to want me to cry.
Take a deep breath. You're okay.
Yeah. So I remember taking a bath, and I just remember crying because I didn't know exactly what I was going to do. But I couldn't tell anybody because I didn't want to worry my parents. I didn't want them to not move and do what they needed to do for themselves. So nobody knew. But I do remember Alexis walking in. And I think she said something along the lines of like, it's going to be okay, Mom. And I think she thought, like, it was, I was upset about her dad being gone. I'm pretty sure that's what she gathered because, what else is she going to think at this point? She's 4 years old. And so I'm thinking, but that's not what it was. It was really like, what am I going to do? How am I going to do this? And just in that moment, I was like, it's what I'm going to do. Like, there's no looking back. I'm not going to feel sorry for myself. I'm not going to, my situation is my situation, and I can do this. Like, I'm going to do this. And it was just in that moment for a short time, I probably was maybe feeling sorry for myself for a little bit, but her reaction just happened to come in at the right time. And I just was like, I don't want her to ever be afraid. I don't want her to ever be afraid that, like, I can't take care of us. And that's where it went.
Do you think it was that moment? Because I've heard the story a couple of times. We've talked it through. But do you think it was that moment that you got up out of that shower and were like, all right, let's go. We're going to do this. And look, here you are. Found yourself a short Mexican. Hit the lottery with that.
Jackpot.
Jackpot with a short Mexican.
Yeah.
So cool.
Yeah.
So great. Man, I can't ask you this next question because I don't want to get you upset, or not upset, but I don't want to get you emotional. But so I'll come back to it. What's the one thing you would tell yourself today? What would you tell the young adult that was sitting in that shower today?
It's honestly what I would not just tell myself, but any other girl that's in that same position. My daughter, now that she's at the age, well, she's a little bit older than I was at that time. And her friends, some of her friends are going through some things, and it's like, we can do this. Like, we can do this. We can do this as single moms. Like, we can do it, and we could probably do it better than some of these others out there.
Yeah. I remember you, we were sitting, I remember this differently than you because we've had this conversation, but I remember sitting at a restaurant with you when we were dating. And I think this was like a very big turning moment for me of maturity, if anything, like realizing how immature I was in my head at the time. But I was sitting with you, and it was kind of a conversation that, looking back, was probably you vetting me out from a marriage perspective, but I was such an idiot that I didn't realize it. But you had said something along the lines of, I bought this house because I'm going to have a family, and I don't just want one child. I'm going to have more. And that's why I bought a 5-bedroom house. And I remember in my head thinking, I think she doesn't care if it's going to be with me or if it's going to be with whoever, but that's happening. And, but there was something about the way that you were like, I'm manifesting this. I don't think you would use those words, but I think that you were basically saying it's going to happen. Yeah. And you've done this over and over. Like, I remember us looking at houses that we couldn't afford, and you saying, hey, we're going to have 2 babies running around in the shower. Like, wouldn't it be so cute if we had 2 babies running around a shower? And we ended up living that moment, like having 2 babies that, were so close in age. So what do you, I look at the podcasts specifically with you, and like the one I do with my dad as well, as a time capsule, is, hundreds of years from now, our family can look back and say, that was pretty cool that they did that. They gave us a glimpse of who they were. What do you want Avi, Max, Thomas, Alexis to know about you and who you were as an individual, as a single mom coming up, and what they should walk away with? What is a key trait that you'd want them all to walk away with from learning from their mother?
I mean, to all of them, like male, female, it doesn't matter. But obviously with my daughters, like, I just want them to know that they can do this. It doesn't matter their scenario. Doesn't matter like what has come at them, that they can do this. If I can do it, they can do it. I know that's very cliche, but it's true. Like, and back to yours, I wasn't just looking for a placeholder. Like, I knew what I wanted, but I wasn't going to accept anything less. So it's not about, I'm going to have this. I knew what I wanted. I wanted this bedroom, this certain amount of bedrooms and a pool and all this stuff. Right. And, I was going to have that happen regardless who was in my life. But with that said, I wasn't just anyone could foot the bill. Like, no one else could foot the bill, like, until I met you. So just saying, like, it wasn't just anybody.
No,
like,
I agree with that. And
okay.
I do understand that. The reason I say it is because you knew it was going to happen. You knew the life you were going to have.
Yes.
You knew that this life was coming. And in a lot of ways, I think that there's people who listen to this right now that can't envision that because they're in a hole that might be so dark that they need to hear someone like you say, it's okay. You just got to believe in yourself. Because one thing you told me, You said, I'll never use a single mom card ever. Not at work, not anywhere. I'll never use that as an excuse for not being able to do something, whether I call in or anything like that. It will never be my excuse. But there was a reason for that. It was because you didn't want people to think of you with limitations.
Right.
And so I'm proud as hell as who you, as a woman you are and have become, thinking and looking back at. I look at pictures of ourselves when we were kids, and I'm like, man, we both are just not the same. We don't even look the same. Like, it's the weirdest thing. But what?
I look the same.
You do, but I think you look. I feel like
I
you
haven't
look
aged one bit.
But you look far. I just feel like we both grew into ourselves in a way that, like, you know, just every which way. But just maturity wise, I'm just proud of what you have done, what you've accomplished, and it's weird to have a conversation with you where I can't talk to you like my wife, because I want to hold you. I want you to know how proud I am of you, and how I think our kids are so lucky that they have an amazing mom to look up to, because they don't have a lot to look up to with me. I'm just kidding. But I just know that what you've been through and the adversity that you've seen and how you've helped us build wealth for the family will go far beyond our years. And hopefully our kids don't have to, we joke, we didn't have parents that are leaving us, you know, a lot. No knock on our parents.
Yeah.
I wouldn't trade my parents for anything, you know, the hard work that I have and same with you is because of how we saw our parents live. But I hope that we have a lot to leave to our children as we go on.
Thanks to real estate.
Thank you to real estate. Yeah. Thanks to real estate, because I don't think we would have been able to do anything else.
Yeah.
So I highly encourage you guys to do whatever you can to invest in real estate and build your generational wealth. If you can afford it, do it, because rates will go down. And if you don't do it now, someone else will. Someone like Tracey. Thank you for coming in today. This is our first podcast that we're doing from our office, and hopefully if you guys can find it on YouTube, check it out, because you get to see what my wife looks like. And if you can look us up on Instagram at Breakthrough Pod Official and follow us there, because you will see clips and find out more about the podcast. And by the way, guys, I don't say this nearly enough, but if you got this far in the podcast, please rate it, and please rate it a 5-star and give me some love on whatever podcast you're streaming this on. So I appreciate it. And Tracey, anything you'd like to leave anybody with?
Thank you. Love you.
Love you. Thank you.